share, the agencies that would share to the clearinghouse, they used to have to send flat files, and then it was just end user customers would just download flat files, and we'd have just this long list of web services. So now we've tied together the downloads and the web services better. We've got a much better search catalog function, a lot more information, and now the people sharing to the clearinghouse, they don't have to send flat files, and we don't have to. They don't have to provide yearly or quarterly updates. A lot more of it is now dynamic. And so I'm just going to go through the site pretty in depth. There's kind of two parts. The side that I'm sharing now is the home page. So I just wanted to point out too, the URL hasn't changed. It's still gis.ny.gov. But some more specific URLs, or maybe some more specific bookmarks you might have or have had, they might have changed. So just be aware of that. But overall, if you still go to Google and just type in, New York State GIS or NYS GIS, it comes up, and it'll be the first hits. So nothing's changed at the, the root URLs. The home page here, we imagine it being a little dynamic. If you don't know, this update happened at late March, so it's still kind of just highlighting that the site has been updated now. But we see in the future, putting either, events coming up or, new data sets, new services available. We would try to emphasize either in this banner as you go down. But as of right now, it's just kind of emphasizing, the site's been redesigned. A little quick blurb about, what is GIS. And then these navigation buttons down here, they start to correspond with what is also up here. So I'm going to get into the data part a little later. And so for now, I'm going to stay in more of this kind of the more informational and text-based pages. So under coordination, we have an overview. Like I was saying, this will change soon to reflect our new name and reorg. Down here on the bottom of coordination, these buttons will also correspond to the drop-downs. So besides the overall, what Geospatial Services does, we also have information about certain groups, like the GAC, the Geospatial Advisory Council. So someone could come here, learn about their mission statements, and contact members. And on the old site, you would have had to used to do like a Control F to find people. Now we have a much easier search function here that you can just search on people's names. Upcoming meetings, and they'll also post notes on previous meetings. Similarly, under coordination, we also have another group called the State Agency Advisory Group, the SAG. It's very similar. Search on members, upcoming meetings, and meeting minutes. We try to keep things pretty uniform, based on the topic. Some other things in coordination, information about the data sharing co-op. That still exists, but the major change with the new site is we've dropped passwords. There's no more locked data. The handful of locked data sets that agencies have wanted to remain locked. I'll show you a document later that has information on how to contact that. But everything else that we actually have on the clearinghouse now is all open and public. So that's been a really big improvement. Part of the redesign, more agencies started to think about, we want our data public, so they dropped the passwords themselves, or they made a formerly flat file that needed a password. They turned it into a public web service, and now that's hosted. So really big improvement there as well. And a little more information about different orgs, maybe not as much detail, but these will just bring you to their home pages, information about getting a GISP, things like that. And then another big thing in coordination is, some of you might know, the GIS Who's Who. It looks a little different as far as just the overall layout here, but a lot of it is actually very similar to what it used to be. A couple improved functions, you know, you can look at it alphabetically by sector, by organization and county, but just sticking with alphabetical, people can now search here, sort, filter on data co-op members. So that's been a nice little improvement as well. So yeah, keep in mind the who's who is kind of a big, huge list of, you know, a lot of GIS users for the state, whereas the GAC and the SAG, those were smaller groups, you know, a specific group. Getting into more of the data, we have a programs page, and this navigation here will correspond to this drop-down. As you guys might know, Geospatial Services has a variety of programs. We have Parcels and Civil Boundaries team, Streets and Address Maintenance, also known as SAM, Orthoimagery, Elevation, Public Safety, and Shared GIS, focusing on web services. So I'm not going to go through each of these, but the general idea is each of these will have their own page or pages, and then you know, if you're looking for something more specific than the program, at these here they drop to different sections of a page. So streets and addresses, for example, just clicking on it, you have a navigation bar on the left here that can kind of jump to a section, and then those sections also correspond to these here. So just sticking with streets and address as an example, you'll find information about the program, what they do, how they do it, and then in some cases, like parcels or address points, I'll show you a little later different ways to download and use web services, but some of them, as you may know, these larger data sets, they can be a little slow on download. So what we've done to help end users is we provide multiple download options. So for instance, there's this table of address points here. If you don't like the interactive map or to use the web service, someone could come right here and, you know, quickly get a download of a GDB or shapefile here. And we have something similar for orthoimagery, for instance. You can use our app. I can go over that. That hasn't been changed yet. We're looking to upgrade that in I don't know, the next few months to a year. We're working with Esri on a brand new app. But I can get into that a little more later. But similar to the SAM page, we have a table-based view. So someone could come here and look by county, and then download orthoimagery by town, by year, by resolution. So this was similar to what was on the old Clearinghouse, just kind of a new facade and a cleaner look. Another big one, elevation. Since elevation is kind of broken down into 3 categories, it's kind of multiple pages. So we have LiDAR, that's focusing on more of the point cloud, the raw LAS format. It's more 3-dimensional. We also have its own page for digital elevation models. That's when they strip all of the points except for bare earth points, and then they make it a raster with Z values. And then the product a lot of people end up using that is derived from those digital elevation models is contours. You know, there's different ways to use these. I'll show you how we list them in our search catalog as web services later, but also contours is another big data set. So similar to the SAM page, we have a table-based view. Click on this. You can scroll down and there's a table-based view that you can search on, but we've also, as part of the redesign, started making more and more apps and maps. Like I said, the more interactiveness, or people want to know, you know, see how to download it or view it spatially. So just one example, looking at the contour map, and I think there's going to be more and more of these types of things to come. Someone could just load this, you know, you zoom into Albany County, and you just click this download link, and it prompts a download. Contours there, you know, almost statewide. LiDAR actually just had a big FEMA 2019 project release, so these gaps are actually going to be filled in very soon. We've released it as digital elevation models and LAS, but we still haven't done the contours yet, but that'll be coming up really soon. Going back to here, another big new add that we've had is an FAQ section, frequently asked questions. We quickly realized we needed to kind of break it up. There's more than just general facts. So we broke it up by kind of categories. Data access kind of talks about that data sharing co-op page, what happened to passwords, how do you connect to a web service, basic things about GIS, basic things about our office, and then in some cases, specific program questions. So that's been good. We're gonna definitely add to this. We can, I'm seeing probably more categories, but then on top of that, within categories that are already there, we're probably going to start to expand these as well. And just one other thing on this kind of the text-based pages here is just an about us. You'll find information about our office, the listserv, how to sign up for it if you have questions, and then a contact us with our email, the shared mailbox that I help monitor, and our office's phone. This has been pretty good. We have this at a few different spots. We started putting it into a lot of our web services. I'll show you that in the description here in a little bit, but also, you can find it at the bottom footer here, and quickly it always just jumps to this section here. So I've been finding, I think more people are reaching out with questions, not just because of the site's redesign, but because they find our email easier, which is, it's been. So now to get into a little bit more of the details, and probably what more of you are interested in is the data search. So clicking on data or throughout the pages, we have different buttons. Or if you're at like a program specific page, there will be shortcuts to jump into the data sections at certain spots, like jump to what I'm about to kind of show you here. So just going to the data homepage. This is now Esri Hub based, so this is going to be less of the informational and more about just getting the data, loading as a web service, downloading it, who's providing it, things like that. On the old site, it used to be called a search, the data catalog, and if you might remember, it was it didn't have the greatest search, and some of the drop downs along with the advanced search, I never had the best luck with using them. So using this Esri Hub technology, which you'll actually see is a lot of GIS sites are going this way. It has a much better search function, and you can explore the data way more than what you used to be able to before downloading it or loading as a web service. So just sticking on this home page of this data section here, we provide a link about an overview document. It's kind of navigating this section. I'll come back to that later, but basically anything you guys might forget what I said today, a lot of it will be in this overview document. We have different categories by theme. This kind of corresponds mostly to the programs I was talking about, but it also includes other things because we have DEC and DOT and a lot of other agencies sharing with us, so their data sets are also falling within these theme categories. I'll get into that more in a second. Besides theme categories, we also have browse data by government source, meaning more, who's providing the data. It's not about extent or anything. It's the source of the data is coming from the federal government, state, county, local. This just clicks to open up the ortho. They call it the Discover app, but it's really focused on ortho and elevation. And like I said, that is going to change in the next month. It's a little farther down the road than some of these other improvements. And a little farther down, another kind of more fluid spot, like the first homepage I showed you, we envision this kind of being the newest app or, highlighting some new services or something. Right now, the Contour app got released maybe, a few weeks before the Clearinghouse, so it's still pretty new, and Contour downloads are very popular, so we put it here. I'm thinking in the near future, in the meantime, before getting our full app released, we're working on what we're calling like a basic viewer. and I imagine that's going to go here, and that'll be pretty soon, possibly within the next month or so. And basically that is, I'm going to show you kind of individual layers, and this basic viewer is going to help with kind of looking at multiple layers up until we get our full app. So getting into more of the nuts and bolts of this, before I get into the search things after this, I want to just kind of go with like a real world example here. So say someone came here, you don't want to use the category buttons, you know exactly what you're looking for. So say I'm looking for fire stations. Someone could come here, and actually you'll see I have schools and legislative, and then these categories are automatically there. It's holding my most recent searches, but say I was looking for, I don't know, fire stations. You can type in fire. It actually pre-populates with some things, and kind of shortcut to click on it, but for now I'm just going to do the actual search. So after doing a search, you'll get this result. Keeping with this real world example, fire stations, that's the top hit. That's exactly what I wanted. Someone would click it, and you get more of that preview like I was talking about. So here, before even downloading or loading it into your program, you can see, do I really want this data? I can see if it's points, lines, polygons very quickly. You can hover, you get kind of the display name, label name. You can click on a point, you get the full pop-up of the fields. You can actually do a lot in here. Besides download, and I'll get into that in a second, you can filter the data. So say I didn't want the whole data set, I only want the city of Albany. You can click on the field, and then as you search on the values in the field, it's all pre-populated. It's working with a live web service, so everything's really dynamic. So Albany pre-populates, I'll click on it, and as you notice, everything turns gray except for the Albany filtered points. So that's filtering on attributes. You can actually also filter spatially. Esri Hub has some predefined tools in here. So let's say, I could draw a polygon, I could make a sketch, or I could, drop a point. Say this was my area of interest, filter to this point, 50 miles, and it does the same thing. Keep in mind when you put on these filters, if you didn't want the whole data set, when you go to do a download, you can just quickly turn this toggle on. And so you'll see the full data set is 2,966 records. When I hit this toggle, it'll show you what your filter number is. And then when I go to click these, it'll be only what you filtered. Figuring that out, just to go over the different downloads. So you might remember, before on the old Clearinghouse, it was really just flat files at GDBs and shapefiles, or in some cases only shapefiles. Now we try to make as many download options available as possible. Services that are hosted in AGOL, they'll have more options, so it kind of depends on the source of the service, but many of them are coming from AGOL. So in most cases, this will be your options. There's a handful that might be coming just from a regular ARC server, or something that's not AGOL based, and you might only have shapefile and a few other options. Whereas, like I'm saying, the AGOL ones will have more options. So you just click on it, whatever you choose. It kind of spins for a second, and then a download actually goes, and it's pretty quick. And like I said, certain data sets, it might take a little longer to download. For those that we kind of know that are going to be problems, like I said, we post it on the other pages as a a table-based view, and we actually have pre-canned downloads on our FTP for quick speed. Whereas this like fire stations data set and most other data sets, it actually Esri Hub takes care of it totally fine, and it downloads no problem. So that's kind of just the overall explorer of it in this view. You can also open up the whole attribute table. That's kind of handy. But really what I want to show you more is you can go to more info. So this will tell you a few different dates, and some of these can be misleading, so we actually try to always put the data vintage in the description. These can be misleading because these are more about when the service was actually created. So you know, if this might have been created on Halloween 2022, but the data could actually be from, you know, but some of these dates are actually like more accurate in some ways because it'll specifically say only the metadata got updated. I'll show you that more in a second, that info page. So yeah, just go into that. You can go to View Full Details, and it'll look very similar to a AGOL content item, if you're familiar with AGOL, or if you're familiar with more of a web service REST page. It's basically all the same information that's on both of those. So you have your summary and your description. Like I said, we try to put the actual vintage in the description as much as possible. So, you know, these fire stations were last really updated as far as the data in it, 5/13/2020, whereas the service was published. And, you know, in some cases we'll talk about what was last updated. It depends on who's hosting the service. Scrolling down, you get, you know, more information about the attributes, but also these nice handy I want to buttons. So there's a bunch of them here. I'm looking at a web service now so that you'll get more options. You get create a map. That's kind of like staying in ArcGIS Online mode. I'll just open it actually. You can start simple, view map viewer classic or the new one, and it just kind of, if you're familiar with AGOL, it just kind of opens up in the standard AGOL map viewer. And for some reason it's loading. That is usually fine. You can create a story map, API resources if you're interested. Viewing more than just the description, you can see the actual metadata. Open an ArcGIS line. I'll get there in a second because that's really handy. If you're, you know, really familiar with web services, you'll notice all the web services shared on the Clearinghouse will have this View Data Source button. If they don't, and if it's a map or an app that's using a service, we'll put the URL actually in the description. So that URL that I'm talking about, though, is in the View Data Source. You'll go to it, and it's your REST page. And this is a URL that you could then copy and paste into ArcPro, ArcMap, QGIS, however you make your service connections, whatever software you're using, and, you know, connect that way. We understand, though, that, you know, not everybody might not be that familiar with web services. So I do want to highlight what you can do is you can say open an ArcGIS Online. It kind of brings you to the AGOL page. Loads, and you can actually just say open in desktop. So now I'm not worried about copying the URL. I don't need to know how to make a web service connection. I can just say open an ArcMap or ArcPro, and you get this P item, and if you click it, it'll automatically open up a Pro session or an ArcMap session, or it might load the service to your, say you had a session already open, it would load it right to that. So yeah, I just want to emphasize, you know, I didn't have to copy a URL and make a connection. I just click that P item and it brings in the service just like that. So that's a really, really nice benefit and function. We're trying to kind of emphasize that better. We do realize it's a little buried to get to here, you know, and kind of do a couple extra clicks from here to then go to desktop. So we're working on a couple other solutions to kind of make that more prominent or hopefully, you know, less clicks. Just backtracking a little bit, going back to kind of the search results, you can actually get a lot of information here too. So I just hit enter, so I didn't really search on anything. So as you can see, there's 264 results. There's actually more because some of these are just apps and maps that might have many layers. I'll kind of show an example of that in a second here. But you know, just doing a quick enter, you're going to see all of our data. You can filter a few different ways. You can filter with these tabs on the top. Data is going to be, it's coming from a web service. It's feature services, map services, feature layers, you know, AGOL web services, they all kind of fall under this category. Then there's apps and maps. That's where, like I was saying, you know, if it's many layers and we didn't really want, it didn't make sense to list, for instance, this hydrography layer. You know, it's one web service that you would want to load And we don't want to list every single layer because it's all these really complicated scale trigger layers. You know, no one's going to really use just one of those layers. So we made an app. And so someone could click on it. This one's the hollow fill. We also have a colorful, a solid fill one. But you know, you can see how it works. It's very similar to the first view I was showing you. As you zoom in this case, scale triggers turn on and off like that. But you could go to view full details, and you can get the actual web service URL here. So like I said, this is a map and an app, so it doesn't have the view data source button. So that's why we put this URL here when applicable. I want to highlight, we put our email here like I was talking about earlier. In this case, there's a lot of details about the source of the data coming from the National Hydrography Data Set. You know, it depends on the service and the data. You could still also, even if it's a map or an app, you can still go into open in a GOL, and you can still say open in desktop, and it'll bring in the base map and that service without having to copy this URL. So that's pretty nice. A couple more things about that search results page back here. We also have added other resources. So a lot of them it's basically mostly external sites where, so for instance, the New York State Museum, Geology, they have their own Esri hub. So instead of, you know, having a list, I don't know how many data sets they have, but say it's hundreds, you can just simply go to theirs, and it just opens up their actual website. This one's a little buried because it's actually not hub. I'm sorry, that was this is a custom site. But another example, I know we've added some county hubs. So I'm under other resources. I'll show you these other NOAA pages in a second. Warren County, though, for instance, they have a very similar to what we've made, their own county hub, and it kind of falls within the Clearinghouse. But you know, so we're really focusing on pointing you to the source of the data. So someone can, you know, it's almost like a filtered Google. So that'll better get you the New York State results that you'd want. So someone could come in here and then explore Warren County's hub. So similarly, there's a couple other ones, Westchester, Dutchess, more and more counties are making their own hubs. We plan to add more. What's also in here besides actual, you know, county hubs, like I said, we're trying to put you more to the source. So for instance, we just have a listing for a census data site. So someone could come here and search on census. Another good example of that actually is this USGS national map. So for instance, we have like some New York State quad PDF index downloads, but a lot of people also always want the USGS ones. So they can just go right to the source. And it opens up the USGS site, and someone could download maps this way. Or, you know, find web service information or other data sets as well. Just sticking with the other resources tab here, some documents and other websites will fall in here. I really like this NOAA one. It's just a list of their, you know, weather web services. That's all these different links. It would just bring you to REST pages that you could load into software. And then also, like I talked about, some data sets not unlocking their data. Like I said, you know, we've dropped passwords, so anything you find in here besides this document here, it was all open data. So what we've done is just listed the contact information about the data sharing co-op owner of the data. So if you needed the data, you could contact them. And as you can see, this list is pretty small. These are the only data sets that remained locked. So like I said, everything else you'll find all open and you'll be able to use. Just a few more things about these search results. Aside from these filters at the top, you have these filters on the left. So, you know, you could filter on services or web maps here, or for instance, geocoding. The SAM team, they have our geocoding web services. So someone could load these and geocode. That's also free. besides content type, source is another big one I want to touch on here. So like I said, we've been working and collaborating with other agencies. This list will grow. We are trying to keep it clean, though. I've seen on other hub sites, it can get kind of messy depending on how people are collaborating. So there's been a lot of work with DEC and DOT and everything listed here. DOS is about to be added to this in the near future. We're getting about 15 data sets from them that they plan on sharing in here. But so say you were a DEC employee, or you know that you're looking for the DEC, you could come here and you could filter on the source agency. So as you can see, DEC is sharing 84 results with us. Share GIS, NY, that's the Geospatial Services source here. So not only will it have those program data sets that I first showed you on the text-based pages, but there's been some cases where it's either, a small agency, or they might not have capabilities of publishing their own web services, and we've gone ahead and actually made web services of the data for them. So that a couple of those will fall under the Shared GIS source because we've made the service for them. These are not examples of that because we make those, but for instance, Greene County parcel data, they didn't have their own means to make a web service. Another one, there's Mohawk Valley tree data. It's kind of random. There were various things that were all on the old Clearinghouse for download. Another couple examples. An OGS data set of a historic shoreline. The Saratoga County planning has this trails data set. So just basically things like that. A couple of random kind of smaller agencies that we've published services for as well. But besides that, the source really reflects who the data is coming from. And then below that, there's categories. These correspond to what you will find on this homepage. So clicking on these will give you the same results as clicking on these filters to the left. There's also tags. We don't control that as much, but you can look at tags. Basically, if the source agency filled out tags, they all appear here, so you can way to filter, and you get some last updated dates too. I just want to kind of show you a couple other examples of some apps and maps, though. So let's, instead of having, say I didn't know exactly what I wanted to search for, I could go, okay, I want to find ortho imagery. Don't know what exactly yet, but now I'm looking at the category, and here's a couple of my choices. There's actually some on that NOAA page I showed you earlier, but what we've done with the ortho program for the data sets, you could go to the other pages and find all our historic stuff, but in this listing here, we've just provided what we think is the most popular and what people want, which is, the latest and greatest. So we break it down in a few different ways. Someone could load these index services to see the extents, and they could actually, put that in as web services. So I'll just show an example of that. It looks just like the other, like the fire station data set, except this will be polygons. But so someone could come in here. Instead of saying view full details and scrolling down here, I actually forgot to mention, you can just say, I want to use this. And it's kind of a shortcut to get to here. So you could say, open an AGOL or get the view data source REST service page and load it in the software yourself. See here. What I wanted to show you, though, was a map. So we've added a map of the latest imagery. So this is actually going to show the imagery, but we've also overlaid it with those index files to show the extents I was talking about. So before loading it or seeing what's really available, you can not only see the imagery and zoom in and see it, but you could click on these polygons and quickly see the extent. Like, okay, so all of this is flown in 2022. Click on here. This area, actually including this, it's a multi-part, was 2021. And then in these pop-ups, similar to the descriptions, how I said we'll put web service links there. In some cases, like this map and app, you can get the individual year services. So someone could just quickly go here and get the 2021 web service URL. That is mostly it. I wanted to save a little bit of time for questions if you guys had any. Yeah, I'd like to, I guess I can open it up now. Does anybody have questions?
If you have a question,
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
no, anybody have any?
Oh, sorry.
Actually, Sean.
Yep.
I feel like we're in a stadium here. If you go back to the metadata, is there a way to download the metadata separately? In what format is it?
Good question. A lot of times it's FGDC format. To download it separately, though, I don't think you can do it here, but I will say, let me show you something in a second here. But yeah, so say address points. They got pretty good metadata. So like I said, yeah, you can go here and you can say view metadata. That kind of pops it up in another tab. This is ISO 19139 format. I know a lot of other ones are FGDC, and I think it depends on the source of the service and how they imported their metadata. As far as data sets made by, GIS Program Office Geospatial Services, we have metadata files listed on the more text-based pages. So someone could go to streets and addresses, sticking with the address points example, and I believe somewhere on here will be metadata.
Depending on the type of data you're looking at.
Say that again?
I'm just saying, does the format of the metadata differ depending on what type of data you're looking at?
Yeah, and then for example, this one I know a little better. Elevation, that'll be all listed here as individual metadata files. So for instance, we'll highlight it here, go to metadata section, and then these are, I believe, maybe more what you're thinking of, actual XML files, and these can be downloaded from the FTP. As far as the services themselves, though, coming from them, I don't think you can exactly get them out. What you can do, though, is when you load it as a web service, you'll be able to say, view item description, and you'd see the whole metadata. ArcMap and ArcPro and software.
Hey, Sean.
Yep.
Are you guys going to coordinate with Cougar and some of the other government clearinghouses like the USDA Gateway?
Yes. It's funny you bring up Cougar. Cougar was definitely one we want added. For some reason, Hub doesn't like their URL. So I've tried to add it, but it just gives you an error message. So actually, I'm just got in contact with Cougar last week, and we're going to work with Esri on exactly how to fix that. Or worst comes to worst, we might just have like a workaround where it's kind of a couple extra clicks to just have to open in a new tab. But yeah, Cougar, basically, if you're searching for like agricultural districts and some other things, we're trying to point you right to Cougar. Like I said, we're trying to emphasize the source data sets. And right now the best example of that I can show you is like that USGS national map, or these NOAA services, or this geology site. It goes right to their actual data set, or this NOAA data access viewer, for instance. It's kind of like Cougars. Like I said, just for some reasons, Cougars gives you an error message when you did this, but we are working on it. But yeah, we're trying to do more things like that. USDA, I'm going to jot that down. Yes, that is another good one to add for sure. But yeah, more things like this where we're just pointing you to the source. We're not trying to duplicate data, and just trying to make it as user friendly as possible. And also, just one more reminder, if you forget about how to navigate any of this stuff, or how to use Hub, there's this overview document here. You could also search on help, and the same document will pop up. It's kind of just a brief PDF, just kind of explaining what I went over the last 20 minutes or so. Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention is say you need more info about how to connect to web services. You can find that in the FAQs. Touched on it earlier, but we have specific documents on how to connect to a web service in various software. That can be kind of handy. I'm trying to emphasize more and more the function of saying open in AGOL and then just open in software. So for instance, find a DEC data set, major oil facilities. I want to use this. Open in AGOL and just open in desktop. And that P item comes in and you open it and you don't even have to worry about copying the URLs. But, if you're more comfortable copying URLs and, that's how you do it, that's how I've been doing it for years, go to those documents as well. And yeah, I do want to emphasize that basically everything I showed you today is dynamic. So, DEC, Tim Daly there at DEC, he doesn't have to send me a flat file of this major oil storage facilities anymore. He has a script that, I'm not sure about this one, but other services, they update like daily. And since he shared his service to the Clearinghouse, Clearinghouse then has that update. There's no lag in when DEC has updated it versus when it goes on the Clearinghouse. So everything is dynamic. That helps a lot with the maintaining process. Any other questions?
Well, thank you, Sean. This was a great overview. It's a great upgrade for those of us using New York State data. So thank you again for your time today. We really appreciate it.
All right, yeah, I appreciate you guys inviting me, and any questions, feel free to reach out to that email, and we hope you like it, and we, like I said, we're going to continue to expand it, and add more data sets, and add more sources, and different interactive apps, and we have a lot of potential to grow now, so a lot more to come.
Thank you, Sean. Have a great day.
Thank you.